Let's look at Daniel chapter 3 here. And it's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And like I said, I've been saved for like 10 years. I remember reading this verse many times, I guess. I think I even looked at it pretty hard a few times and never saw what it was really saying. And that's verse 19. And this is where Nebuchadnezzar is about to throw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the midst of the fiery furnace. And I use the word midst for a reason, and that word means middle. And that word's used a lot in this chapter. But first let's look at this. He commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And here's the strange wording, 7 times. What does that mean? And the Lord showed me that meant 1 week, one week of years, or 7 years. In Daniel chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar's turned into a beast of the field, and 7 times pass over him, which are 7 years. And then there's the 70 weeks of Daniel, which are weeks of 7 years, and the last week being the 70th week of Daniel, or the Tribulation. So really this verse is saying heat the furnace 1 week more than it was wont to be heated. So the tribulation's going to be hot. Now, it's also a furnace too. The furnace is part of it, and I'll show you what the furnace is. And I'm going to show you that after I show you the midst. And the word midst is used here in Daniel chapter 3 8 times. And I know I've heard lots of pastors preach, if God says something twice, boy, you better listen if he says it more than once. And here God's saying midst 8 times. And I cut and paste this in here so we could see it highlighted. In verse 6, if you don't fall down and worship, you're cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. In verse 11, the midst. In verse 15, the midst. Verse 21, the midst. Verse 23, the middle. Verse 24, the middle. Verse 25, the middle. Verse 26, the middle. So here we have the furnace heated 7 times, or 1 week, the week of tribulation, more than it was wont to be heated. And this word furnace is going to mean the entire earth. The earth is the furnace. We're going to be in it. And we're going to be in it for half the time. I'm going to show you that. As you can see here, we're going to be either gone, or if we remain, we'll be caught up with the Lord right in the middle of the fiery furnace of earth, the tribulation. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were cast into this furnace, and who was in the furnace with them but Jesus Christ, and the fire had no power over them, so they got glorified bodies, right there in the middle of the furnace, just like we'll get glorified bodies in the middle of the furnace. So this should be pretty striking to you that 8 times in Daniel 3 midst is used, and the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated, the tribulation. And let's take a closer look at that furnace and those 7 times and see if there's some other things in the Bible that'll lead us in the same direction, which there are. You'll start to see all kinds of things, once you understand the doctrine. You'll find all kinds of places, things I haven't found. This is just what I've found. So Psalm 12, verse 6, The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. So, tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. And then we'll start to see that midst is used a lot, and it's striking how God always comes out of the midst to rescue us. So here we are, Exodus 3. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. So there's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, burned with fire and not consumed. And here's the Lord. Where does he appear to him? Out of the midst of a bush. Exodus 14, and the exodus from Egypt of the Israelites. Moses stretches out his hand over the seas, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the Egyptians pursued them, and they went into the midst of the sea. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. How about Isaiah 43? When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. Amen. So, that was the first thing the Lord showed me. I guess was Daniel chapter 3, because I'm going to try and go in the order here of what I think God showed me, and there's so much stuff it's hard to organize it, so I'll move on to the book of Revelation. I guess a good way to do that would be by showing Daniel 3 here is right dead center in the middle of the tribulation. It's Revelation chapter 13. What would be the context of it? Because Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2, he sees the image of the 4 kingdoms of the earth, of which he's the golden head. And what does he do? He immediately makes an image of gold. So here's an image, Revelation chapter 13, the image of the beast. And the height of this image was 60 cubits, 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof was 6 cubits. So 66, 666, the mark of the beast in Revelation chapter 13, the image of the beast in Revelation chapter 13. What other parallels are there? Nebuchadnezzar gathered the princes, the governors, the captains, everybody was gathered together and gave their power unto him. Okay, if you didn't, then you're going to be thrown into the midst of the furnace. And Revelation chapter 17 teaches that the kings of the earth, the 10 kings of the 10 kingdoms, give their power unto the beast. So just like here. Now let's look at verse 4. A herald cried aloud. Okay? Like he said, worship the beast or you'll be cast into the fiery furnace. And what do we have in Revelation chapter 13? We have the false prophet, and what does he do? He makes you worship the beast, the image of the beast, or else you're killed. So I think I'm about out of time, and continue on with part 2.